copy also. Good morning, Morai Rabotai. We are continuing on Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim, Hilchot Tefilin, and we pretty much concluded the main parts of Siman Lamed Vav, which really is the differences between the Ktivah of the Ashkenazim and the Sfaradim. And we have really the Mishnat Sofrim, which is a long piece of Mishna Berurah, since the Shulchan Aruch did not really spend a lot of time explaining the Surat HaOtiyot, the way every letter should look, and the halachic details of there. Even though that Maran in Bet Yosef does explain them, in Shulchan Aruch he left it out, and Mishna Berurah here created the Kutres of Mishnat Sofrim, which discusses really the way the Otiyot should be according to the minhag of Tav Bet Yosef, which Maran really brings from Sefer Baruch Sha'amar. Maran does not discuss the Sephardic way of the minhag of the writing of the letters in the Torah, in Tefilin and Mezuzah, which is really strange. And really the Chida, Alav Shalom, Maran Chida, asks this question, the Kaf HaChaim asks this question, why is it that Maran does not discuss the minhag of the Sfaradim in the way the Ktav was? We have numerous different change of minhagim from the Ktav of the Ashkenazim to the Ktav of the Sfaradim, and Maran doesn't even discuss the Ktav of the Sfaradim. All he brings is from Sefer Baruch Sha'amar, which is the Otiyot, the way the Otiyot, the letters are written in the Sefer Torah of the Ashkenazim. So Chacham Ovadia also picks on this in Yabia Omer, in a Tshuva in Yoredah in Chelek Bet, the second volume of Yabia Omer. He discusses this in a Tshuva, I believe it's in Siman Chaf, and he says because Maran did not really find a full kuntres that was as extensive and as needed, which was written by Sfaradim, and therefore he brought what Baruch Sha'amar had written already. Since the change of those details does not really make a psul, is kasher for both of them, so therefore he did not bring any ha'ataka from anybody else. Now, what we have from the Ktav of the Sfaradim is really written by the Abetz in Moruk Tzia, and he brings, based on what we mentioned before, and Zohar HaKadosh, Kitvei Arizal, and we mentioned already that there were those that questioned the validity and the legitimacy of the details of the Ktav. Chazon Ish was really one of the first ones that challenged that in several different places of his writings, and again that created a pulmus, a whole saga of different writings to try to prove that even the Gedolei Ashkenaz, including the Chatam Sofer, including Rabbi Shlomo Kluger, Shura Rishona, the greatest of the names on the list of the Ashkenazic Achronim, that actually sent that type of Ktav of Mezuzah and Sefer Torah to their students, and so on and so forth, which again indicates that every kehillah has their minhagim that they should be keeping. And again, what we call the Ktav of the Sfaradim, the Moruk Tzia calls it Ktav HaMe'usheret, the lucky, the fantastic Ktav. But we call it usually Ktav HaSfaradit, and the Ktav HaSfaradit also is different than what we have the minhag to do. Several different differences. Again, you see how this could become complicated and very technical. So we are going to do everyone a favor and ask for whoever wants to be a sofer. We'll probably set up something for them to learn actually the details of the Ktav halachically, but to make it a little bit more feasible to go through the Shulchan Aruch, we're going to skip the contrast of Mishnat Sofrim, which is a long and tedious learning, and Bezrat Hashem, for those who are interested to learn more or become Sofrim, we could accommodate that in a different setting. So be that as it may, that being said, we're going to start Siman Lamed Zayin, which is Zman Arachat Tefilin Ubo Gimel Sifim. What is the proper time of putting on tefillin? Can you get up in the morning, 4 o'clock, and put on tefillin in preparation for Shacharit? Can you put it at night? Can you put it in the afternoon? What is the proper time? Schar mitzvah tefillin says Gadol schar mitzvah tefillin. The reward of the mitzvah of tefillin is so tremendous. V'kol mi she'eno maniham, right? Maran Shulchan Aruch, if you don't put on tefillin, hu bichlal posh'ei Yisrael begufan. You're considered a very high-level criminal in the spiritual world called posh'ei Yisrael begufan. You are deliberately destroying your spiritual world, so to speak. And this is again based on the Gemara in Masechet Menachot, Daf Mem Dalet. And Mishna Berurah writes to this: anyone that puts on tefillin is marich yamim ba'olam hazeh. Why is the reward of tefillin arichut yamim, by the way? So Kaf HaChaim writes, because the mitzvah of tefillin is put longevity. That's correct. Because the mitzvah of tefillin is to put them in front of your heart, corresponding to the mind in front of your brain, and in front of your heart on the arms, and that is the ikar of your livelihood. The heart, which pumps the blood pumps life and oxygen and blood to the whole body, and the brain, which really governs all the activities of body, all the hormones and so on and so forth, which gives livelihood to a person. Therefore, if you control those two parts and dedicate them to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that gives you longevity. The two limbs, so to speak, that give you life, if you control them and you guide them, you direct them towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu and His service, that gives you longevity, says the Kaf HaChaim. And the truth is that the Ben Ish Chai writes in Ben Yehoyada, he explains it based on Ariya Kadosh. He says the mitzvah of tefillin is that every day you have a spiritual light that is specific for that day. And when you do the tefillot and you do the mitzvot of that day, you create and increase that light of spirituality. And when you do the tefillin, you have this sefer from Rav Zamir Cohen, The Science of Torah, and so on and so forth. It's translated. They have a whole part there that says somebody, like many findings that was by mistake trying to find something else, they discover some other thing. They found that if you shoot a certain frequency of thing to people, you see in their image different lights, different hilas around them, different lights around them, and depending on what activity they have, the different lights. If the guy gets angry, for instance, there's a reddish thing around him. If they're calm and composed, there's more thing. When they're focusing in spiritual things and so on, it becomes white. The most intense one is, I think, purple. So it's really those 7 lights. It goes from red to purple, all the spectrum of colors. And they realized that when you put on tefillin, and they got a regular person, a regular state, and I don't remember details. I don't want to say things that I don't clearly remember. It's a certain color, and then when they put on tefillin, around the tefillin, around the whole head becomes purplish. The whole thing changes color. It's tremendous to see. Like, I would love to actually. I would pay to see this actually. I would love to actually see it and experience how it works. But this is what he writes over there, Zamir Cohen, in his book. So that's what Ariya Kadosh says, that every day when you do the mitzvot, you're creating those orot, those higher spiritual levels that actually give sustenance to a person's physical, because the physical only lives because there's a backing of a spiritual power to keep it alive. And that mitzvah that you do by tefillin brings about longevity in that manner, writes the Ariya Kadosh. And again, that's correct. That's another thing that he brings over there. That very interestingly, that especially if it's your left hand, not so good for lefties, but as left hand, which is closer to the heart, if you strap it and constrain the blood thing for a short time and then you let it go, that actually decreases very seriously the chances of heart attack and so on. So yes, correct. But again, nevertheless, the Kaf HaChaim writes in the tremendous schar and importance of the mitzvah of Tefilin, it brings from Zohar HaKadosh that the Tefilin is shkula keneged kol mitzvot. It's weighed and compared in comparison with all of the mitzvot combined. It's a tremendous thing, the mitzvah of Tefilin. And the Ben Ish Chayil has a sefer called Ben Ish Chayil. Ben Ish Chayil writes that the mitzvah of Tefilin is skula for remembering the Torah and mitzvot. It's a skula lezikaron. You want to learn and remember your learning? It's a skula. When you put on tefillin with kavanah, you buy a proper tefillin, you put the tefillin properly, you're careful not to talk divrei hol when you have tefillin, and so on and so forth. The zihirut, the meticulousness of a person about the mitzvah really has a skula for remembering, retaining the Torah. And it says the remez is ba'aya le'ot al yadcha ul zikaron ben enecha, right? Zikaron is memory, right? Prefrontal cortex actually is the place, right? The doctors in the house for memory, for remembering. You're mamash putting it there. Ul zikaron ben enecha. The remez of the Torah is that this part of the brain is actually the one responsible for memory, for remembering things. And that's like, 3,500 years ago, before anyone knew even what the cortex is or what the brain is altogether. So, recording, please. So, Zikaron ben enecha, leman tiyeh Torat Hashem beficha, that Hashem's Torah should be in your mouth, right? Hashem's Torah should be in your mouth. And you see that the Torah is retained for a person's zikaron ben enecha leman tiyeh Torat Hashem beficha. You're going to remember, and Torat Hashem will be beficha when you put on tefillin. So that's what the Ben Ish Chai alav shalom says as a skula for remembering Torah. Now shlemar Hashem alehem yechyu. The Mishna Berurah continues that it's a skula for arichut yamim, as the pasuk says in Yeshaya Navi. Hashem alehem yichyu. When Hashem is on you, literally, Hashem alehem kama yichyu. You will live. Klomar otam shnosim shem Hashem alehem. Those who carry the name of Hashem on them, literally, but tefillin yichyu, they will live. Right? It's an amazing thing. And the Ben Yehoyada adds to this that this haftacha that you have for arichut yamim, for a person that's careful in mitzvah of tefillin, is for someone that does more than his regular obligation, and he puts on tefillin the whole day. It's not, don't think you're coming in late and you get to shul for yishtabach, and right away you put it on, and by ubaletzion already you take it off and run out of the door, and you say, no such a thing. Says the Ben Ish Chai in Ben Yehoyada, it's only for someone that does more. Actually, the truth is that Maran Hida asks a simple question. Says the Mara says Masechet Shabbat Lamed Aleph. Mara says Kol Hazahir Bener Havyan Banim Tamnei Chamim. If you are careful in Ner Chanukah, Ner Shabbat, you'll have Banim Tamnei Chamim. Says Maran Hida, really? I've been in quite a few places, and I've seen quite a few people. Right? Maran Hida was one of those that traveled the world twice in his lifetime, and actually he settled at the end in Livorno. Long, beautiful story of Maran Hida. Maran Hida says, I've seen a lot of people that light Nerot Shabbat every single Erev Shabbat, light Nerot Chanukah every single night of every single year, but they don't have Banim Tamdeh Chachamim, right? The kids look like Malach HaMavet. It's like, doesn't look like anything like Banim Tamdeh Chachamim. So what happened? Says Maran Hida, when Chazal say that haftacha, is not talking about somebody that just merely lights Nerot Shabbat or lights Nerot Hanukkah. It's talking about someone that's zahir, You love it. You do it with joy, real joy, not fake. And you do it with diktuk, the proper time. You learned the halachot before. What's the best time to light Nerot Shabbat? Nobody knows this. Nobody knows that there are Geonim who say you have to light Nerot Shabbat half an hour before Shkia. Wow. Right? Exactly. And Nerot Chanukah, so many hundreds of details in Nerot Chanukah. What would be the proper time? What would be the proper way of doing it? Do you do it by the door? Do you do it by the window? Do you not do it by the window? Do you do oil? Do you do candle, wax? Do you do white shemen zayit? How much oil do you put? The regular minashuk does mean nowadays is 11 o'clock at night? Not yes, no. So learning properly and doing it with zeal and with energy and with gishmak, that it's like Kemotzeh Shalal Rav, like David HaMelech says, Sas anochi al imratecha kemotzeh shalal Rav. I have so much gishmak doing the mitzvot of yours, Hashem. It's like I just hit the jackpot, right? Take a look at, I don't know if they have videos of these things, but the moment that a person finds out that they won the jackpot, probably you could find it. Look at their face and see if you do that when you do the mitzvot, right? David HaMelech did. Sas anochi al imratecha kemotzeh shalal Rav, like finding a tremendous beauty, right? Every time, and not getting said, that person, yes, he is muftach that he's going to have banim talmidei chachamim. But you think the kids that see a tent like that, they don't want to become talmidei chachamim. If not, they're probably brain dead. They have to put them in an institution. But they would like to, because you see the gishmak that the parents have. Of course, spiritually speaking, has that zchut as well. Same goes, says the Ben Ish Chai in Ben Yoyada, with this haftacha of Chazal, that when you put on tefillin, you do it extra. You do it the whole day. You do it a little bit extra. Even if you have to go work, you do it a little bit extra. 2 minutes extra. There's a beautiful Gemara. We're going to have it coming up in Masechet Brachot. I believe it's in Daf Lamed Aleph, if I'm not mistaken. The Gemara there talks about the member of Rabbi Yochanan and Shlakish there, that asur lemalot pif schok ba'olam hazeh. A person should not be feeling himself with laughter in olam hazeh. And the Gemara brings different amoraim that did different things to make sure that this happens. So someone had a party and there were too much happiness there. So the Baal Habayit, the host, brought the most expensive crystal that he had. Back then, crystal was very expensive. 400 zuz. He smashed it in front of everyone. Everyone said, oh, "Why do you do it?" He said, "Because he wanted to level, so to speak, the happiness." So I think Mara says, Abaye was very happy, and someone saw him. So this Gemaratim says, "Asur lemalot pif sechok ba'olam hazeh." He says, "No. Tefilin kama anachna. I've put tefillin." So Rashi there in the Gemara learns that I've put tefillin, so I'm under control. I'm under control. I'm not out of control. I'm laughing. I'm happy, but I'm in control. Marchu Reb Chaim Vital alav shalom. He writes in Sharei Kedusha. He says, "No, that's not the pshat. You know what's the pshat? The pshat is tefillin kama anachna. You know why I'm rejoicing? I'm jumping from joy. I'm so happy because I put tefillin. Geshmak. I'm not sameach hasimcha of gashmiut. I'm not happy, rejoicing from trivialities of the world. I'm happy because I put tefillin. It's a simcha shel mitzvah. That's how he learns. It says a person who does mitzvah should be happy like that, right? It's actually very interesting. So I hold on to your question. It's like Rav Kiva Eger had a son. Rav Kiva Eger was the king of Achronim. He had a son that gravitated towards the movement of Hasidut. Back then was a big machloket between the Hasidim and the what they called them the Mitnagdim. And his son, of course, had the brains of Rav Kiva Eger, but he became a Hasid, right? So Rav Kiva Eger was once speaking to him in learning, and he said, well, the Shitav Ben Azai in Masechet Shabbat is that you, for Hotza'ah, for being Chayav of Hotza'ah in the Shut HaRabim, you have to have one Akira and Halacha. Every step that you take is a new Akira and Halacha. So how can you have 4 Amot, Hotza'ah, 4 Amot, and in the Shut HaRabim, you will never have that. Because every step that you take is Akira Halacha, Akira Halacha. You're picking up, you're putting down, you're picking up. You'll never be Hayab, because now, unless you jump, right? You jump 4 Amot in one jump, 6 feet in one jump, right? So says, how do you understand the Gemara? Gemara says, if you're taking the lulav and a trog and going out, it's Hayab. So his son says, of course. This is really Hasidic. He says, of course, you know when you're gonna be, if you're holding the lamb and throw up, of course you're gonna be jumping from joy. You're gonna be jumping 6 feet from joy. That's the pshat. It's not a stretch in the Gemara. So that's really Hasidic. But the Maaseh, that the Marchu writes that Tefilin kamanachna. Tefilin kamanachna is I'm jumping from joy. I'm happy because I put on tefillin. That's what the Ben Ish Chai writes, that the haftacha is only for those people who do it in an extra way. In a he was first. A question.
Oh yeah, I was wondering the first interpretation. Did he say he's in control because he had to put it on? Because he put it on that day?
No. Had tefillin on. Tefillin kamanachna. It says I have tefillin. I'm in control.
That said, there's plenty of people in history who were very high level and died very early, and I'm sure that Ari, so it can't just be.
Very good. The Ramban asks your question. The Ramban in his writings, in Kitvei Ramban, he actually writes, he says, well, you have people, he brings similar haftachot to this, and then he says, well, you have people who were killed under Sfarim. Supposedly, so yes, you have, and this is again a very complicated writing of the Ramban in his kuntris for Rosh Hashanah and you know the din of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the way the judgment works and so on. It's a very complicated writing of the Ramban, Sha'ar Gemul, the sefer that the Ramban wrote. But nevertheless, Ramban writes there are certain overriding heshbonot that Hashem has. If someone's time has come for whatever reason, or there's a specific gezerah for whatever reason, yes, those things could happen. But in a general term, in a general sense, you have this gulot. So says the Mishna Berurah, and not only longevity, you're also guaranteed olam haba. It's tremendous things. The Geinam does not have any tfisa, any it cannot catch onto him, so to speak. And all of his avonot are going to be forgiven. Again, these are all tremendous haftachot that you have. You have a sefer of the Pilei Yoetz, one of the favorite sfarim of mine. One of the sfarim that I started with when I was a very young teenager, so maybe it's the reason of certain affinity, but it's written in such amazing, unbelievable way, poetic, nice. It's like Ruach HaKodesh shafuch al kol dvarav. It's tremendous. He was one of the Gedolei HaPoskim in the city of Izmir in Turkey, and Ben Ish Chai, much of what he wrote in his sefer of Halacha, Ben Ish Chai, is actually emanated from and inspired by the halacha sefer of the Pilei Yoetz called Chesed La'alafim. He also has a Shelot Tshuvot Pilei Yoetz and so on. Rabbi Eliezer Papo, a tremendous personality of Torah and a prolific writer. He has Orot Eli, many other Sfarim as well. So in Chesed La'alafim, his halachic work, he brings all these haftachot that the Chazal have given for the mitzvah of Tefilin, and writes Rabbi Eliezer Papo. He says they are only mentioned for somebody that is mekayem the mitzvah with all of its dikdukim and pratim. As we mentioned from Maran Haida and from Ben Ish Chai, he also says the same thing. He says you have to do it with dikduk. You have to learn the halachot of Tefilin properly and do them properly in that way with happiness, simcha, and love. And that's something important. And Ben Ish Chai, the Kaf Chaim rather adds to that. It says also you have to be careful not to speak any dvarim betelim having the tefillin on. But there are many people you will notice, people who are careful in the mitzvot. If you go talk to them when they have tefillin on, no way they would speak with you. They would, aside from Torah and tefillah, they will not talk a word when they have the tefillin on. And again, that's a tremendous madriga as well. It's harder when you have to run the gabbai, the rabbi, or the shul, and so on. Sometimes it becomes a very challenging task. But those who are possible for them to do it, that's something important, says the Kaf Chaim as well. So continues. We're out of time. Bezrat Hashem, we'll continue this in the days to come. So,